What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Thank you so much for tuning in to Nerdy 430, the podcast where comedian Tim Keck and I talk about nerdy-ish things for 30-ish minutes. Today, we are talking about the 2021 or 2022. I don't know how the...
2021.
2021? That's so strange to me because it happened in 2022. 2022 Best Picture winner, Coda. Now,
yes.
You may only have been talking about one thing from the Academy Awards for the past couple of weeks, but there was, in fact, more to it than just Will Smith slapping Chris Rock. There was
that was the same night.
It was the same night. Also, I just got very thrown off by the fact that my cat is screaming in the background.
I can barely hear it. Keep going, Kev.
Great. I'm going to keep rolling.
An incredible intro
like
so
the
far.
Producers did on that fateful night in
after
March.
Will Smith physically assaulted another person. I don't know when, Kevin, I don't know anything about the Oscars. I don't know why you're looking to me for guidance. You obviously didn't prepare that much. I'll take it from here. I thought it would be a good exercise for us to discuss a quote unquote good movie. And because we do a lot of nerdy stuff, which is usually people would argue is garbage. And I would say that I love that garbage.
They're garbage movies. They're terrible.
They're garbage movies. They're terrible, but they're fun and they can be very good. And they're just judged on a different scale than Oscar movies are.
Definitely.
So how would we actually discuss?
We do a podcast where we review junk food, and we decided to go to an actual $4 sign restaurant for once.
Yeah, it's the difference between a Michelin star place and then some weird Little Caesars pizza that you ordered with buffalo sauce instead of tomato sauce. There's a tier of crappy food that isn't delicious and incredible. And that's the tier that I like to spend most of my time in. I'm looking for a $5 meal. I'm looking for the best dumplings in town. All right. And now it's time to check out the Peking duck. Time to see what's up with that. I don't make a habit of it, but I'd like to check every once in a while and make sure I'm not crazy. But I love the trash, Kevin. We love trash.
We do love trash. But that's kind of, I think what was impressive about this movie, or what surprised both of us about this movie, is that because we tend to watch these garbage nerd movies instead of the Peking duck of the cinema universe, I always have this assumption that all these Oscar movies are going to be really, really dark and grim and depressing, or they're going to be way over the top serious and melodramatic. And I feel like a lot of tragedies show up at the Oscars. A lot of movies where even if something, really beautiful happened, it'll be a person's life story that ends with just senseless tragedy. Like Alan Turing in The Imitation Game. It's wow, look at this incredible person who was basically murdered for being gay. It's just kind of it's a rough reminder of the real world around us. And I personally spend most of my time watching Iron Man.
Exactly. Parasite was the best movie I've seen that's won the Oscar. I remember seeing Parasite and being leaving the theater and being oh my God, that was great. Being wanting to talk about it a lot, being this movie's incredible. And then all of a sudden it started showing up in more theaters. It got Oscar buzz. It won. It was it felt like a win. It felt like a win for cool, good movies, but it also had this dark edge to it. And I'll say for Coda, I'm really of two minds of this. One of which is at its core, this is a very generic, mediocre, not always well thought out movie. And on the other end, it explores deafness and disability in people and people with this disability living in a world that is not catering to them at all, in a fascinating, thought-provoking way that I think has truly changed my outlook on the world and I think it's I think I've forever changed by seeing this movie. I wouldn't say it's a good movie. I mean, I'm kind of shocked at it's not It's a good movie. I guess I shouldn't say it's not a good movie. It's definitely a good movie. I wouldn't say it's like a great movie. This is not Training Day. This is not Parasite. It's like, it's fine. It's like, it reminds me of like Remember the Titans. There's like a weird harmless quality to like the whole thing where like, maybe I'm conditioned with like Euphorias and like edgier. I guess I expected edgier shit. And ultimately it's just like, oh, a girl has a crush and she wants to sing and the teacher's like getting involved in her life. And all of that stuff does nothing for me. But like her parents not understanding that her passion is something they literally have no connection with is like fascinating. It's fascinating. I don't know, Kevin. Do you agree with anything I've said so far?
I agree insofar as it being, I don't want to say it's a generic movie, but I did note that it's like a really solid example of how to go through storytelling in a script. Every single scene, you could feel it's got a positive valence or negative valence. Things are going good for her or things are going bad for her. Like right after she has that scene with her mom where her and her mom have this like unexpected moment of connection. It's like, wow, things are going pretty good for Ruby. And then she goes and talks to her brother who's still upset with her. And it's like, oh, but I guess not everything's going good for Ruby. And despite that, the things that this movie did, it did really well. So even though you could see that structure in place, it did a really good job nonetheless of immersing you in the feeling of being in high school again. Like this is a movie where I really felt like what it was like to be in high school again. I could feel that awkwardness off the kids in the choir. I could feel that feeling of like when, I forget the fucking guy's name, but the dude, her duet partner, when he tells one friend of his about the situation that happened where he heard her parents having sex, and then that friend told all the other people and somebody made fun of her in the lunchroom, and he was chasing after her in the hall and saying, hey, I'm so sorry. I thought, this was just fun. We were just joking around. It took me back to when I was a kid and I accidentally stepped in it when trying to be funny, like, I don't know. It was very relatable in that way. And I think it was really cool, everything they did with her parents and the relationship that the world had with them, like you mentioned. This movie isn't necessarily about having deaf parents. This movie is about Ruby's life. Like the movie is just about Ruby discovering, hey, she actually does have this gift for singing, and she has to make the hard choice of sticking with the family business or pursuing music school. Just happens to be their parents are deaf. So that's this added layer that we get on top of that usual movie.
Right. But the usual movie is a movie we've seen countless times before. There is nothing original here in that aspect. There isn't I would say there isn't a single original thing outside of the deafness in this movie. And I think that's okay. But I think it is something that's just that. I mean, I don't know. There's like scenes with her and this boy at this lake. And I'm like, I don't know. Who cares? Like, oh, high school's hard. It's like, I get it. High school's hard. I've seen a lot of things where it says high school's hard, like there's a teacher who's really invested in her for some reason. And he's very involved in her life. And there's just a lot of instances in this movie that could be solved with like a conversation. And maybe that's like part of it is like, I'm a high schooler. I don't know how to have these conversations. Also, I'm literally not able to have conversations with my parents. They literally aren't able to have conversations with other people. But like there's a moment when the news crew shows up to support her family's business, like do a story about them. And she's like, I can't miss practice. It's like, if you like call your teacher and have a discussion with them about this, this is not a problem, right? Like
you can't just call Mr. V out of nowhere with this shit. He's Mr. V, Tim.
There's also like, tell your parents what you're doing. And then, it's not like they didn't tell her. They seem completely unaware of what her schedule is. It's like, if you just told them anything, there wouldn't be problems in this. There was like a lot of stuff like that to me. I'm really picking nits now. I have so many more on this. Honestly, there were a lot of moments like with her mom. There was a moment with her mom where her mom brings in a red dress. And she's like, I know I'm always badgering you about how you dress and how you look. And I was like, wait, really? Are you? Because so far we haven't seen that. There was one moment where she gets in the car and she's like, oh, you wore your fish clothes to school. And I'm like, that doesn't sound like a badgering mom. That sounds like, oh, you're a disgusting girl who went to school covered in fish. Like, this isn't great. This isn't, we're not seeing her put on makeup, but I think it's but that is like a fascinating angle that I would love to explore, because you're talking about people who do not have the ability to hear. So they are prioritizing and putting a greater value on things they can see. And this woman was like a pageant winner. She beat hearing people or whatever they made a point of saying. And so it would make sense that she prioritizes good looks. That's what got her husband, who is also deaf, that they've built this life together for. Like, everything she's gotten out of her life was from the way she looked. She prioritizes the way things look. She's putting that onto her daughter. That's a fascinating thing that they just it's not a part of the story. That's not a discussion they're trying to have, at least in this context. And they kind of peters out. There's all little weird things, like the boy that she's into, he auditions, he fails, and then he just didn't get into school. And we're just like, okay, I guess he's bad at singing, this thing that he's been doing for 4 years. He never liked it. Did he tank it intentionally? Did he not want to do it? There's so many, but we don't care. That's not important. And I think these are things that I think are very nitpicking worthy, where I'm like, oh, in a normal story, we would explore things. There'd be some editing here. There'd be some writing here. But like, everything I'm complaining about now is also completely canceled out to me by her parents watching her sing and not understanding it and looking around the room and seeing people's reactions. Like, those scenes are so good compared to the rest of it. Like, it's fascinating. I'm telling you, my mind was blown by some of these scenes. Like, the exploration of her parents, their relationship. It's so good. It's so good. And then we just go back to mediocrity, and then we'll have like just an amazing scene, and then just like mediocrity again. And I guess I know why it won the Oscar, and it's because it did something that probably no other movie has done. But I don't necessarily think it's like an amazing Oscar movie, I don't know. What do you think? Is it an Oscar? It's not what you traditionally think of as an Oscar movie.
It's definitely not what I traditionally think of. But like I said, that inherent quality that it has, even when you're saying that we've seen this before in other movies, I hesitate to name another movie that isn't like so over the top about how showy or like preachy it is. I'm thinking about The Blind Side. I'm thinking about Mr. Holland's Opus.
Good Will Hunting is what I was thinking of.
Actually, I haven't seen Good Will Hunting.
I mean, it's an amazing movie. It won an Oscar for the screenplay, and it's about a guy who has all this potential, and his town is holding him back. And he's scared of this, and there's just an exploration. It's very emotional. Robin Williams crushes it. I don't know what I'm trying to tell you on Good Will Hunting now, but it's just the kind of movie. That's what I associate with an Oscar. I think of Training Day. I think of Parasite. And this is like it feels like kind of like a Disney Channel movie that they just threw in a couple F-bombs and their parents fucking. But the rest of it is very PG. Maybe it's also just kind of like the trash that I'm used to eating, where the stakes are life and death. And in this, the stakes are not life and death. The stakes are, does she have a good relationship with her parents? And like, those are the stakes. And I think maybe I'm not used to those being the stakes.
So I guess maybe in the fast food equivalent, what we have here is like a Five Guys burger, where it's like, what tier do you put this in? Because this is so far superior to any of the burgers beneath it. Your Shake Shacks, your In-N-Outs, your McDonald's. It's not even the same weight class. But then above that, you have like Emily's Burger. You have like Spotted Pig in the West Village. Like these like ultra high class burgers. But at the end of the day, it's like, am I getting as much enjoyment out of that $35 burger as I am this $4 Five Guys burger that just fucking slams? Like, I think that's the thing is these movies that seem like over the top, like Oscar movies, like quote unquote Oscar movies. I feel like I almost need to be in a mood to watch those. And this movie was so watchable. I would absolutely watch this another time. Like,
you're right.
It was just a good time. It was a good, pleasant viewing.
I didn't love it, but I feel like my life is better having seen it, which is like kind of, I guess, what I associate with an Oscar movie too, right? In some regard, where you're like, I don't necessarily want to watch Good Will Hunting all the time, but I did, and I'm like glad I did. Like this was a cool thing. Like I don't think I've rewatched Parasite, but it was like one of the craziest movie going experiences I've had. Like,
oh man,
I guess I get it. I get why this got buzz, but it's also, I don't know, it's equally out of my wheelhouse as some of these other Oscar movies, I guess. The analogy I was thinking of maybe with these stakes is like how we've talked about superheroes, which we talk about all the time on this podcast. The stakes with Thor are different than the stakes with Captain America, right? Like you make Spider-Man's villains have to be street level. Like he's a street level guy. Thor is fighting gods and the Hulk, right? Like there's different tiers. And I think in this movie, the stakes are lowered to like really just how people feel about each other. And that's not necessarily something I enjoy as much. I don't know. It's not as fun to me. It's not like there wasn't a crazy plot twist. You pretty much knew everything that was going to happen in the movie. It was just like pleasant and cool. And I don't know. I'm going to stop complaining about it. And I want to just talk more about the things that I really liked about it, because it really kind of opened my mind up to more representation stuff. And I think we talked about it a lot. I mean, I talked about it a lot last week with Everything Everywhere All at Once, how like representation really matters. And I'm personally very ignorant of how much it matters and how important it is. Like deafness. We just watched Eternals, and there's a deaf character in there, and that deaf character is deaf. She can't talk. It's played by a deaf actress. She can't talk. Like, that's cool. This is profound. This is groundbreaking. But at no point does she have trouble communicating with anybody else in the scene. They're not like stopping to translate for her. There isn't any miscommunication. There's no difficulty. It is just, she's deaf. That's cool. She's here. You know, it's like having a regularly diverse cast. Like, you know, there's a black person, there's a white person. Cool. We're all people. We're all talking. And it's like, no, but this is like a different thing. And I think this movie did a great job of dealing with like, oh, this is something that is actively not being catered to in the rest of our society. Like, I don't know how I would communicate with a deaf person. If a deaf person really wants to be my friend, how do I interact with, like, you have to meet them halfway. You have to like learn sign language. You have to reach out to them, and they just can't. Like, I guess I just didn't. It makes you think about how hard it is to be a member of that community, you know?
Oh yeah, man. I used to work at a visitors bureau for tourists to come in to my hometown. And occasionally we would have a deaf tourist come in. We had one woman that worked there who knew ASL, but if she wasn't there that day, we were fucked. What we ended up doing, it was before we even had phones, like the bar scene in this movie, it was before we had cell phones that could like text easily and were made for doing more than phone calls. So we just used the computers that were there and would like pass the keyboard back and forth. It's so interesting you mentioned that with Eternals, because yeah, it's like, obviously I was glad for the representation there, but that's the exact kind of thing that I was going to bring up that this movie does, where I feel like we have now maybe become accustomed to these Upworthy posts on our Facebook feeds and Instagram feeds where it's like, this blind man lives in a city with 30 other people, and for his birthday, they all came out and gave him a high five hallway. Like, and I think I saw one specifically with a deaf man where it was like every single person he interacted with that day had learned ASL. And so
I saw one with a kid, and the entire neighborhood learned ASL. And it's like, that's amazing. And that's like, a beautiful story. Yeah.
That's a cute video, but that's not happening in fucking Boston. Like,
right.
It's not the world that these guys live in. Like, this family, they live in the real world. And so it was interesting to, again, I shed some light for someone that's completely unaware in the hearing world. It was interesting to see that from their perspective. Oh man, yeah. That scene where she's singing in the finale and it cuts to their view and all the audio cuts out. I mean, what a fucking scene. The concert where her parents go to the concert was one of the most profound things I've seen. I remember hearing Sarah Silverman talk about her parents coming to watch her do comedy, like doing stand up. And I've kind of thought about the same thing with my folks, which is like, do they think I'm funny? Like they do, but like they wouldn't love my act, like my stand up, and they're not supposed to, because it's just, there's a generation gap. There's an experience gap. I'm talking about like Sarah Silverman, like her parents aren't supposed to
thinks she's the funniest person in the world. But she said her dad would go watch her and loved watching her. Didn't laugh at a thing. He just spent the whole time looking around at everybody else laughing and being like, oh my God, everybody's like just excited that his daughter was like doing well, but like not really understanding why she's doing well. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that's what that scene reminded me of the parents.
Yeah.
I was like, they're bored out of their minds. They have to sit for like an hour and watch nothing. And they're telling each other, I like her dress. It looks nice with the curtains. Like, these are the only things they can take away from this. And I thought it was really profound to see her dad looking around the way I pictured Sarah Silverman's dad looking around and seeing people cry or get emotional. And like, that's the only way he can understand the impact she's having, because she's literally doing a thing that he can't comprehend. They were born deaf. That's like a whole other thing too, is like, how are you supposed to read lips if you were born deaf? If you lost your hearing, I kind of get it. But like, born deaf is like, it's a whole nother world, man. And it's crazy too, to me, like how small their world was, as it's like, it's just the three of them. It's just the three of these people, and they have their daughter and they love their daughter, but on a fundamental level, they cannot connect with her the way they can connect with their son. And there's a moment in there where she's like jealous of it. She's like actively jealous of the relationship that the parents have with their son. And and I feel like it's the kind of thing, like, as a grown up, it's like, okay, this is like a childish thing to think, because if you take a step back, it's like, oh, they only have each other. You have the whole world, and these three people only have these three people. So I don't know. There's so many profound, beautiful moments in this movie, honestly. Like, I think it's changed the way I view a lot of this stuff.
Yeah. It's amazing how I brought up that it's like, the movie's not about the fact that she has step parents. And even though that is obviously a large part of the movie still, it's amazing that it speaks to that universality. I thought the same thing about comedy when I was watching it, where it's like they have no frame of reference. You could pin a similar scene with any art. You could do a similar like structure of that scene with a firm businessman who's only ever known business. You know, he's Logan Roy, and maybe Kendall Roy wanted to do sculpture, and Logan Roy doesn't know what the fuck makes for a good modern art sculpture. He'd have no idea. I remember there was a time where like I've done so much improv in my life, and my parents knew that I did improv for years and had seen a couple shows. And I would tell them like, hey, like our team is pretty good. And they'd be like, yeah, their shows are pretty fun. And then they came to see one of our shows that we did at Legion in a back room, and they saw like 3 other teams of adults doing improv. And then afterwards, like too loud in the back of the room, they were like, you guys were definitely the best. And like the tone changes because they were able to get that perspective. But in a case where you can't get that perspective, I mean, like what a heartbreaking fundamental block to have and to have to overcome. And man, that scene where she was singing directly to her dad, and he put his hand on her voice box so that he could feel the vibrations. I mean, I was crying.
I was emotional for sure. I don't know if this fully brought me to tears, but I was very swept up in it. It got me in some parts. There's beautiful moments in this, you know? I guess I hesitate. Maybe I'm just being a pessimistic dick, I guess. I'm just like, I'm hesitant to say that it's a beautiful movie. There are moments in this that are beautiful, and other moments where I'm like, her and a boy on a log, like, who gives a shit? You know, like, you keep saying it's not about it's not about deafness, but I'd argue that's like the redeeming thing about, like, that's the thing that makes this movie unique is the deafness, you know?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. So for you, that's like the interesting part of the movie for you. And I think that's completely okay. For me, I guess I was also interested in, I think they did the teen drama just really well. Like, I can't point to another movie that does it that well and that relatably without some kind of a weird spin on it. You know, you have that Miles Teller movie, not Whiplash, the one where he was in high school with Shailene Woodley.
Fault in Our Stars. And then there's... what was the Bo Burnham one? I just feel like school and high school and middle school has just been like, I don't know. It doesn't do anything for me. I want to watch superheroes kill each other. That's what I want.
Me too, pal.
I guess there's no fight
The
from you
Boys
there,
season
Kevin.
3 coming soon.
Should we do
some beefs and thieves?
Yeah, let's do some beefs and thieves and
All right.
get on out of here.
I got a beef.
Where's the beef?
Okay. So
Okay.
I use the soundboard just because it's the only way I can guarantee those sound effects get used. So here's what I'm thinking. Her sister, I've been thinking about this all day. Or not her sister, Jesus.
Her friend,
Ruby's friend, yeah.
Gertie.
Gertie establishes in the beginning of the movie, we established about Gertie that she liked to fuck. Like immediately. It's like, this is a very horny person. She's fully in her like teen libido phase. She comes over to hang out with Ruby, is like, yo, your brother's hot. All of us have dealt with situations with siblings where it's like our friends are talking about our siblings being hot. And it's just like,
Especially
Jesus
you,
Christ,
am I
stop
right?
it. Tim, Jesus Christ, stop it. And I need you to stop texting me that every night.
Hey, give me your number and you won't have to worry about it.
So there's later the scene where the bar fight happens with her brother and Gertie is there working behind the bar. And then Gertie and the brother hook up in like a stock room in the bar and then are just kind of in a relationship for the rest of the movie, we're assuming. But I don't really know. I've been trying to figure out if the point of Gertie as a character is to prove that her brother, despite being deaf, can still be a sexual object, which I think is okay if that is the read. Seriously, I think that's okay because, like, look, who are we used to seeing sexually objectified? Angelina Jolie, Margot Robbie. It's not.
What are you talking about?
new.
You're just naming. Are you naming hot women or are you naming people who can hear?
I'm naming hot women. I'm naming women where it's like, okay, the point of half of the scenes in Tomb Raider is look how hot Angelina
Yeah, but he's
Jolie
a good-looking
is.
guy. You're saying he can't be a sexual object because he's deaf?
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm wondering if that is. I'm saying the opposite. I'm wondering if the point of Gertie's character is to reinforce the fact that he can still be sexualized. He can still be, I guess, used as a sexual object.
Okay, your horny in the gutter minds immediately took this to a sexual place that I just did not see as necessarily as bluntly as you did. I took it to mean, in a metaphorical sense, he is more willing to embrace the hearing community and is more open to like interacting with people outside of their group. Whereas like the parents only interact with each other. They call everybody else hearing bitches. They're like very negative about everybody else. And the son is willing to go out to the bar. He wants to interact with the guys. He wants the sister to leave for her own good. And also so that he can do his own thing. He has a hearing girlfriend. He's like at the concert. He is making a better attempt to pay attention than the parent. The parents are like not in it at all. And I spent a lot of time like thinking about the brother and like it just felt like watching the scene, it looked like he could almost hear what she was doing, but he can't. But I think between his hearing girlfriend who was talking to him and like explaining things to him and him just trying to enjoy I don't know. He just seemed like he was more open to change than his parents were. That's what I took that as. I mean, sexualizing a deaf person, I don't know. There's got to be hot deaf people out there, right? Like, I guess I've never thought of deaf people as unfuckable before. I don't know where you're bringing this in, Kevin. I've always thought deaf people were hot. I don't know what you want me to say.
Consistently finding the worst possible interpretation. Oh my God. This podcast is a nightmare where you just say something and then find out that there's a way to frame it to make you a monster.
Only for you. I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying, but I think there's like I just presented it in a broader metaphorical sense, which is how I interpreted it. I didn't necessarily think of him as like not a sexual object. I mean, immediately she's like, yeah.
That's what I'm saying is I'm wondering what her function is because the cast for this is so stripped down. This is a really small cast. Yeah.
I think she is just there. Yeah, I guess as a sounding board for Ruby. And then I think is like kind of like a bridge for her brother. Like their relationship is a metaphor for his willingness to work with people outside of the little deaf community that they've created with themselves, you know?
Yeah. And they mentioned that there's other deaf friends that they have that they see like once a month, which is, I thought that was interesting too. We never end up seeing those friends, so they clearly are not that close.
It's fascinating.
Yeah. Any beefs, Tim?
Yes, I got a beef.
Where's the beef?
Okay, I definitely just blanked on it, but there are definitely I've already named a couple like moments in the script where it's like, okay, this is weird. The boyfriend has a thing. We don't acknowledge it at all. There's like a couple things in there. Oh, we mentioned this that didn't happen at all. Like a big plot point in the movie is we can't afford to have someone who's like a translator, a hearing person on the boat. And at the end of the movie, they just have somebody who can hear on the boat that they're training. Like everything is solved by her ability to sing. And I don't get it. I feel like it's kind of generic and not good, right? Like, did the community rally behind them? Maybe. It looks kind of like they're going into the bar and like people are signing to them, but there's like no, I don't know. There's no moment where the community is like, hey, you know what? You helped us out. We're going to help you get this interpreter. Hey, you know what? We're going to take some ASL. I mean, maybe that's implied very loosely, but like, how did they start paying this guy? How did they get the money to put somebody on their boat and essentially solve all of the problems that were in the script?
Maybe she got a scholarship that was so good it actually paid her more than tuition costs.
Maybe they did. Did she even get a scholarship? We don't know if she got a scholarship. We assume she got a scholarship because she's going to school. I guess you don't need to tell us she got a scholarship. But like one of the main conflicts in the movie is that she needs to be on the boat and around them to translate. And then at the end of the movie, they don't need her to do that anymore. So what? Why? You can't, not a sentence, it's just, that's why I'm like kind of like everything that's not the beautiful. It's like a beautiful exploration of deafness and this like problem of like how do you interact with people who like just fundamentally don't understand each other. It's like all these beautiful relationships. And then I feel like I have so many nits to pick with like the rest of the script. It's just kind of dumb and bad. I mean, the teacher is kind of crazy. He's like,
teacher
he's
might
having
be in
him
a
play
different movie, dude.
Marvin Gaye. The teacher is in a completely different movie. He's like, I went to Juilliard and now I teach at a high school in bumfuck nowhere because I'm good at this. And I coached one kid for 4 years who can't pass an audition. And then I just, haphazardly found one other girl at the school. He's there for two people. His only reason for being there is with two people. And he has a beautiful house with a family. He's got a kid. He's got a house on a lake. He's pulling in good money at a public school teaching music to two people. Like it's weird. This is not a perfect movie. There's a lot of fucked up. There's a lot of dumb shit in this movie.
I noted the house too. I was like, what are they paying teachers in Boston, dude?
The house is gorgeous. Are they in Boston? Is that where this is?
I think so. Somebody said something. I think they're like,
she's going to Boston because that's where Juilliard is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is also a thing. Didn't Manchester by the Sea win a couple years ago? I know it was nominated at least. There's a lot of Boston. I feel like if you want to win an Oscar, you set your movie in Hollywood in the 1930s or Boston.
Because Boston's like kind of like a sad place or like a funny place. It's like people always talk about like good. That's why good comics come from New York and Boston, because it's like a crowded city where people talk shit. The weather's bad. There's just like, it's not ideal. Like life is not ideal there or here. So like that's where art comes from,
Yeah.
Either excess or like not the opposite of excess, which is what Boston is. It's fascinating. I mean, Boston is like a fascinating place from a literary perspective. You want to do some thieves, Kevin? Do you have any thieves that we haven't gone over?
Let's see. I want to hit I'll hit a thief.
I think you're a thief.
I think the scene where the audition scene is ridiculous. Even loving this movie, the audition scene is fucking ridiculous. What do we learn about this audition? You are not allowed to have anyone in there with you. That's it. It's you, piano accompanist, the judges. She walks in, forgot her sheet music. The accompanist doesn't know the song, but who's there to make it better? Mr. V. Oh, this must be okay because the panel of judges personally knows Mr. V, right? No, he introduces himself to them. He says, nice to see you. Maybe there's been some kind of a thing. Maybe he accompanied the other kid that was auditioning or something.
He also definitely accompanied the other kid, right?
You think
There's
so?
no way, like, he was there to support the other kid.
I thought it was more of like a moral support thing.
Maybe a moral support thing, but you'd think he would have, if he believed in the kid as much as he believed in her, he would have introduced himself to the judges, said, hi, I'm an alumni. Here's this person.
Well, let's make this very clear. He barely believed in the other kid.
He did not believe in the other kid at all.
He could do until she showed up.
The other kid was trash. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was garbage.
But they're like, okay, yeah, no, it's fine. You can come on in here and play the accompaniment. And then when they notice her start signing and she's looking up the whole time, they turn around and her family's there. And every time one of these like little strange things happen that gives her a little bit of an advantage, you see the judges because they just kind of shrug it off like, oh, well, I guess we're doing this. And it's like, no, that is not how these things work. She would be kicked out of that audition. Like, that was...
I don't know. What are we supposed to get out of this? I mean, my first thought, too, is like, there isn't an essay portion of your application. There's nothing intriguing to Juilliard that you're someone who comes from an entirely deaf family and somehow you've overcome that obstacle to become a decent singer. Also, you know ASL and you can like sign and sing. Like, that'd be the first thing I would do with her, right? Like, if you're trying to get somebody into school, you would play up what makes them unique and special. And that's something that is incredibly unique and special. And it's the same thing that the judges were excited about. So like, how is that not known? How is that not the thing that they're doing?
College of Music, they are merit only. You come in, you sing. That is all you are to them. You are a number on a sheet of paper. You're a call time, Tim.
Yeah. Likewise, the kid should get in because his parents are rich, right? Isn't that kind of implied? Or they're not around?
He probably fucking bought his way in anyway. Anyway, this is Thieves. The thing I liked about the scene was it was really cool. We started up Thieves and I launched into a tirade. It was really cool to see the teacher fuck up the piano on purpose to give her another chance to start over.
That was very cool.
That was just a solid moment. It's the kind of thing you hope you would do in that moment, but deep down, you know you probably wouldn't.
Yeah, the teacher character is insane, but there are moments of clarity where you're like, oh, this guy's cool.
Yeah.
This is what you want from a teacher character in a movie.
What's your thief, Tim?
My thief, I'm trying to think of like another specific instance, but I think I mean, Ruby's amazing. She's very good.
Mm-hmm.
Their interactions with the family. I mean, the concert where they're looking around kind of steals the show for me. That's probably my biggest thief is that scene. But really, there's so many interactions where they don't hear anything. Like, I was fascinated by there's that scene where they like sabotage the boat, where like the inspector like calls in like the Coast Guard on these guys, and then they can't hear it. And I was it's just another scene where I'm just like, oh, fuck these people. There's people who are like actively trying to get these people to fail for either money purposes or just to fuck with them because they don't think deaf people are capable of doing stuff. I mean, I understand that they need somebody on the boat, but I don't know. That scene was crazy. And man.
Yeah, obviously she was a dick to them, but also can we talk real quick about, it seems like something was wrong with the fish in that bay, and some sort of wildlife agency was trying to make sure that everything was okay. And all the fishers were like, oh, what the fuck is this? Come on.
Right. This is an anti-conservationalist movie.
Yeah. It's like how in Ghostbusters, the villain is the guy from the EPA.
It was crazy. It's like there's people who are trying to protect the planet and they're investigating, but but it's $800. But I get it though. It's like they have to pay $800 to have somebody on their boat. Dude, the moment when she opens up the suit and takes the tag off, I was like, oh yeah, fuck these people, fuck them, and fuck her. She ended up ratting them out. She did this whole thing just to fuck with them. Like, these are bad people. Their intentions are not good, regardless of whether or not their ultimate goal is like conservation. It seems like their main goal is money and to fuck over these people for whatever reason. I don't know why they're painted as the bad guys, but in this movie, they definitely are.
Maybe they're like a conservation group run by Nestle. They're just this fucking like terrible like shell lobbying company.
Yeah. And this guy is like, I didn't really understand the business side of it, where like this guy is just raking in profits and charging the fishermen like way less than they're worth for their catch, like $3 a pound or whatever. Like that seems very low for fish. He's probably making twice as much off of these fish, but like, how is he able to do that? What is their arrangement? How did things get so bad? Like, I don't know. I guess.
Oh, you didn't recognize that guy? That was Jonathan Keyfood, the founder of Keyfood.
One of the worst grocery stores in existence. Most disgusting food chains there is. Key Foods. God, if you want to find a fuzzy apple, you can find a fuzzy apple at Key Foods. Oh boy. I bet you didn't know how many vegetables come with fuzz on them, but they're out there and you can find them. Swing by your local Key Foods. Support local, am I right?
Mm-hmm.
And on that note,
support my local Starbucks every day. Can't wait to support the Dunkin' on my block.
You ready to wrap it up, Kev?
Yeah, let's wrap it up.
We hit everything you wanted to on Coda?
I think so. You?
Yeah, man. I was ultimately, I think, an okay movie that had a profound impact on my life.
You heard it here first, folks. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Nerdy for 30. As always, you can, pull us up on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you're currently listening. Rate us 5 stars, 5 stars. Send us an email. Tim, you check the mailbox to see if we get anything?
Every day, my man. Still nothing.
Oh, Tim's checking out there. He's waiting for an email. Hit him up. He's lonely.
I can't wait. I have nothing else going on.
Wow. Until then, stay nerdy, friends.
Bye. There we go. Coda.